I'm John Shrek McPhee, the Sheriff of Baghdad. This is the SOB podcast. This is part two of this series with my man Ed. Last time we talked, my man Ed was destroying tank battalions at the Haditha Dam. Ed?
Yeah, I'm here.
Boom! I dropped that on you.
Yeah, you did. So I'm proud to be back with you, John. We had just neutralized the Nebuchadnezzar and Hammurabi and a couple of other ones that I can't remember the name of. And we were ready to move south past Lake Haditha to a town called Rawa. So
Rawa's a shithole, by the way, for everybody listening. I fucking hate Rawa, but go on.
Okay,
not to interrupt. Sorry, dog.
So we went up, and it was really unique. It was cool. It was one of the moments that I don't remember a whole lot vividly, but I remember the Rawa bridge crossing. So it was really neat. The same guy that we pulled up for sensory suppression going into the weapon storage areas, we said, okay, you're up again. So basically we had the whole convoy of vehicles. Picture, if I remember correctly, there was a big ridge line, and then there was kind of a curve that went around, and then there was a span bridge that went across the river, and I can't remember what it was that dumped into Lake Haditha. And it was cool, right? There were probably 4 guys that were standing there with AKs, and they were just at a checkpoint to cross across the river there. And so we peeked around the corner and we said, okay, yeah, there's 4 dudes there. We need to send in the wolf. So I had, I think, a couple of predators, probably goodness, I think it was a couple strike eagles, and of course my DAPs, the direct action penetrators, the 60 gun ships. Yep.
Yeah.
With welded wing, right? So I had those guys holding back for noise abatement, and of course the Preds were up above, and they were kind of giving us environmentals, and we said, okay, well, Stink will go up and he'll suppress those guys, and then we'll go ahead and roll across, and nobody will know that we're just driving through town, and we'll actually not leave carnage behind us. So that was our best laid plans.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh because this is where shit goes south.
Yep, shit goes south. 3, 2, 1. So Stink rolls up. Basically, I believe that he's got a suppressed MP5, and he's walking up with his hands free, and he's I don't think that he's probably backlit. So these guys are looking at him, and then he takes a knee, and the MP5 swings around, and he drops all 4 of them, just like on TV. It's like poison darts. So everybody, just like on TV, everybody drops like a sack of potatoes, except for this one guy that falls off the freaking cliff, Shrek. He falls off the cliff, and as he's dying, he cranks off a couple rounds, and then shit gets real. So, I mean, you can't even make it up. It's like it's scripted, right? So he falls off the damn cliff, which there's never any cliffs anywhere. Nobody ever falls off of them and then shoots rounds.
Hey, in the movies, there's always cliffs.
Yeah. So there's about 60 or 80 folks that can probably corroborate this or tell me that I'm all effed up, but I'm pretty dang certain that dude fell off the cliff. He starts cranking off 2 rounds, and then just like on TV again, somebody across the bridge in town starts ringing a damn bell. Dang-a-dang-a-dang-a-dang-a-dang, and then you start seeing lights come on, and we're like, oh shit. So the commander, while Bill says, hey man, let's do it. So he was also a Somalia vet, and isn't really all that excited about getting into another city where he's trapped in unarmored vehicles. So we we bring in all the uh, fires platforms, and I put the DAPs at about, goodness, maybe 200 feet above us, and they're flying armed reconnaissance over our head, or armed,
Escort.
what do you call it? Yeah, armed
Armed
escort over
escort.
our head, right? So
Hey, let me ask you
about the
this.
nastiest
Let
thing
me
you could
ask
ever
you.
get. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. How many platforms were you guys having overhead that you had to control at one time?
For this day, it's about to get good after this
uh,
little vignette.
uh,
It's about to
yeah.
get dumb. But this one, there were probably only 6 or 8. So we
Okay.
probably had
Okay.
2 Strike Eagles, a Pred, and 2 DAPs. So, well, that's not even 6 or 8, is it? There may have been
I don't know. Hey, I'm an army
no
guy.
gunship. That's all right.
I'm an army guy. Don't judge me on the math. You know what I mean? That was 6 or 8 for
Yeah.
me.
So we'll say 5 or so with my on one hand. So we dropped the DAPs down. We crossed the bridge, and I'm not going to tell you that it was a Somalia thing. It was really kind of everything was pairing up to be the fight of the century. It ended up where we're driving through town. People are taking nickel and dime shots at us, and the DAPs are just laying into fucking everybody, bro. They're doing pedal turns on anybody that steps up to the plate. So we get through town without taking a scratch. Nobody was injured, nothing. And then once we get out of the city limits, the DAPs asked for intentions, and the boss said, "Hey, man, suppress anything that's left while we break contact." So we continue to drive and leave the DAPs in town to do what DAPs do, kind of type 3 control, so to speak, and then we ease on up. At this point, it gets real interesting because the boss said, "Hey, let's separate. We're getting into the Fertile Crescent, right? We crossed across the Haditha Dam, and now the landscape changes. It goes from like Tatooine deserts to irrigation and all that, right?" So we decided to split up, and we sent 2 troops in one direction, and my troop was going to go in a different direction. I can't remember what the intent was, but our end state was to we were going to go direct towards what became known as Grizzly. Maybe we called it Objective Grizzly or something like that. But
Yeah.
the MSS became Grizzly in the future, and it was the Iraqi version of the NTC, right?
Yeah.
It was the tank
It's
training
I
command.
I think it's still there and still called that, right?
Is it? Okay.
I think so.
So we were trying to go direct to Grizzly, and then there were 2 more troops that were going to do something. I don't know what their intended purpose was because we never got there. We started driving across the Fertile Crescent, and we ran into a key terrain feature that we hadn't seen yet, and we saw it after we were in it. So we were driving along, and basically my troop drove off into a really, really deep and steep irrigation ditch, right? And it ejected the top gunner out into the water, and luckily he was all right. And but what it did do is it broke off the tie rod ends on our pin scour, right? So both wheels just pointed straight out, which is not where you want to be when you're the only ones north of Baghdad in Iraq, as far as we know. So we're like, oh crap. Well, of course, our 2 mechanics, we had 2 ASE certified mechanics because, well, that's how you guys roll. They were with the other 2 troops, right? So they also had a winch on the back of the mothership vehicle that we would unload 55-gallon drums of fuel with, and do on-the-spot maintenance on the vehicles and stuff like that. So we threw up the signal flare, so to speak, and everybody rallied on us. But it took time to do that, right? Because we were separated from each other. So when they finally get in, they hook to this gower and they pull it out of the irrigation ditch and start to see what all is going on. And it's not so cool. So, of course, those tie rod bolts aren't in the bench stock. So they ended up stealing bolts from mud flaps, brother. And they hammered them into place and they drilled them and pinned them. And we drove another, literally, I think it was 1,800 miles on the modified tie rod ends. We ended up doing, maybe it was 1,800 miles total that we did across Iraq for this desert mobility. It was about 43 days. We did a significant number of hundreds and hundreds of miles after that on these modified tie rod ends. So they fixed that. They pull us out and they go to the recce dudes and they say, "Hey man, we're not going to be able to find a really good remain over day site. So let's find something that's defendable." So they said, "Okay." There was something that was put there by God. Man, it was a perfect bowl with a plateau coming off from west to east, and then it went in kind of an L shape, and there was good. It was just a fantastic key terrain feature that they found. So we made best speed to it. They said, "Man, we may not get there during daylight or during this period of darkness, but we'll get there right about the time that the sun comes up," which you and I both know isn't ideal. But it was all we had, and it was defendable. So we made a race for it. We ended up pulling into it just as the savages are out praying. There was a huge open field with some crops and stuff. Mostly it was just it was kind of big desert, and there was a village off to the northeast and one that was due east of us. Northeast was about 3 clicks, and far east was about 6 kilometers, as I remember it. This will end up being probably the worst day of my life. So we go to pull into this thing, and you got to stay up, and we put OPs out in 3 of the 4 cardinal directions because one of them didn't lend to it, and he had oversight by the other 2. That was due south. We didn't have anybody due south. So that little plateau that went from west to east, a man Stink was out there, and he was just sitting there with a couple other folks, and they were kind of manning the watch, right? The rest of us, we stayed there. There were a couple people that were out in the field praying, but you never know if anybody's good, bad, or indifferent at this point, because some people just don't care. They're just farmers. Well, that probably wasn't the case on this one. So Stink goes out there, and about all the rest of us stayed up for another hour or so, getting ready, putting out our nets and everything like that, and kind of stay and watch. And then nobody came, so we got our heads down, and we sleep maybe 3 or 4 hours every morning. I can't really remember. We didn't get it this morning, and it was the first day that I had taken my boots off. So it was the 2nd of April. We kicked off around the 16th, so my feet were good and shitty by this point. So I decided to take my boots off when I went to sleep and do this thing called a sock change. And that would prove detrimental. And this would be the last day that I took my boots off in that 43 days. So, man, at about 9 o'clock in the morning, one of the boys from my truck came over and they kicked me away. And they said, "Man, we need you to go to the northern ridgeline and get some planes." And I'm like, "Oh shit!" That was kind of a hell of a wake up. So, man, I threw my boots on. I can't even tell you that I laced them up. That I tied them. I needed your little lace thingy dingy.
Yeah,
so
boot kit.
Yeah, that's right. There's a plug. So,
solid plug, baby. Boot kit. What's up?
Solid plug. So I threw on my boots, and I had my rucksack probably in my hand. I had my M4 in my other hand, and I threw my plate carrier over top of me. and I'm in a t-shirt, and probably don't even have a helmet on. I'm guessing I don't have a helmet. I certainly have my peltors on. So I run to as I'm running across the northern ridge line, I'm getting the radios initialized and everything, and I start to hear the OPs, and they're calling up, and they're like, "Hey, man, we got a couple technicals to the north," and then another OP called up, and he's like, "I got a couple of technicals to the east." So then the boss, of course, chimes in, and he's like, "Hey, is it the north or the east? Is it the same ones?" And both of them said, "No, definitely mine is 11 o'clock, and the other guy deconflicted." And now things are getting real, right? So we've got a whole bunch of technicals, Hiluxes with either PKMs or RPKs or a combination, right? On the top of them, and we're like, "Oh shit!" Well, we've got quite a few pretty solid dudes inside the wire, so I'm not that concerned. But it is, it is a bit disconcerting. So I'm running to the ridge line, and as I get out in the open, everybody else is kind of laid down, and prone, and they start to engage. So as I'm running across, man, I'm the only guy that's moving that I care about, and man, there was one truck that was to the south, and that was the only opening to our bowl that we were in. See, he had a PKM. And he started getting some. And man, it was, again, just like on TV, as I recall it. And there's freaking dust flying up all around me, man. It was the last place I ever wanted to be. But there was no cover and concealment between me and where the guys were prone. And over that little ledge was 35 guys that were running at us with RPGs and AKs. They're about a click to 800 meters out at this point. So, man, I'm running along, and it's like on TV, and I'm running in super slow motion because anybody that knows me knows that I'm the slowest sprinter on the planet. I can run real fast for real long distances, but that ain't doing that a bit of good right now. So, I wish I were anywhere but there. And then my man, Mark hops up on we had a Barrett that was hard mounted on every third vehicle. So it would have had a 240 Golf on the top and a Barrett, and then the other ones had a Mongoose and the GMG that we talked about in the last episode. So he gets on that Barrett and cranks a round off and takes the engine of the Hilux out while it's driving, right? At 2,350 meters, as lased by my laser rangefinder later. So real good shot on a moving target from a guy that's not technically a sniper. I don't think he was. I certainly wasn't a unit sniper. So takes the engine out, and then he engages a guy on the top gun, gets him. And then the shooting stops, right? So then another guy gets on the damn Top Gun. Shooting starts again. He cranks him. He takes him out. He ends up taking out 7 guys in the middle of all this crap while we're being overrun at 2,350 meters, which I think at the time was about the longest shots in history. There's been some dudes that have done it since then. I don't know if they were in such a... Probably you. But... I tell you, man, it was awesome. So, what do you think about that? Give me your insight.
Dude, look, in those situations, right? Like, look, the first 10 days in Tora Bora, man, we were shooting guys at 2,500 meters, mountain to
really?
mountain. Yeah. And
that
with a
stuff
50,
was... Go ahead.
with a Macmillan 50 cal, and I'll tell you this. It's kind of a shit show, you know what I mean? As a sniper, as a unit sniper, right? It's always, one shot, one kill, one this, one that. And I'll tell you this, from fucking mountain to mountain, there ain't no way to tell where the wind's blowing. Like, so I would say that is, if I was the guy on the Barrett, I'd have been like, I'm going to start here and shoot. And you see it hit sand or something, like, we're fucking low. We're low. And then, once you know how to hit it, right? Like, fucking step up to the plate and get schwacked, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Not impossible to do, but it probably took a couple rounds to get on, and then
Oh,
but once dudes are on, you're done.
yeah. I'm not telling you that it was 7 rounds for 7 dudes, but it was certainly all that I needed that day, and
Yeah,
it impressed this kid.
yeah,
So that vehicle is suppressed and or neutralized. Nobody ever came to the south anymore that day. We would choke them off before they got down south, which was fantastic. So man, I run up to the ridge line, and the boss is calling, and he's like, "Hey man, call up the talk and give them sprint overrun, troops in contact, sprint overrun." And at the time, I didn't really know what that meant, but it meant something really cool because words have meaning. So, man, I called up with it, and they said, Roger. And I said, man, state ETA of, give me some aircraft, state ETA. And they said, well, the first aircraft will be on station. It's a Winchester Viper. So basically he's out of bombs and bullets, but he has fuel, and he'll be there in 25 minutes. And I said, all right, man, that's cool. So I tell the boss, hey, we're getting a Viper with no bullets or bombs. And he's like, well, we'll take it. We'll take all comers. So what ended up happening is they rerouted 2 AR refueling tracks, right? Aerial refueling tracks. So they put 2 tankers overhead. And apparently they pushed every aircraft in theater over our position. And we had them for probably the next 13 hours or so. So it was fantastic. It was the best thing you ever wanted, but it was for shit for about 30 minutes. So, man, the first Viper shows up. Well, let's back up a sec. So we get there to the ridge line, and I've got my super awesome shorty just made short M4. So I hop up, and I'm gonna do some gangster stuff and start engaging this line of troops that are about 800 meters out. Man, that was probably the only time in my professional history that I ever switched to full auto, and it was the last time. I dumped a magazine into these dudes, and they didn't even know about it. They were about 800 meters out, and I said, well, that was kind of dumb. So we're not going to touch that go button again. So flip back to safe, and I just sat there and waited for him to come. Right. So we've got about 4 or 5 of us at that northern ridge line there, and the northern edge of the bowl, and we decided that we're just going to hang out. I'm kind of taking the lead from the other dudes, and everybody stopped shooting except for Chili. My buddy Chili's got an SR, and he's just having a good time. He shortened the barrel on his SR a little bit to make it a truck gun, but he was still having good effects at the 800 meters that those guys were. So he's doing good things there. Well, about that time, we started seeing from Stinky's OP, the one that was off to the east, we started seeing and hearing rounds going over our head, and RPGs zipping by. And then Doug calls up and he says, hey man, he calls the boss on the command freak, and he says, hey, we're taking effective rounds from the front and the back, and we need to pull chops. We need to go anywhere but here. And man, while Bill keys up, and I'll never forget it, man, he goes, negative, hold your position, conserve your ammo, we're here until it's over. And that was unpopular. That was unpopular. But it was the best leadership decision that I've ever been certainly a party to firsthand. But see, he had read a sit rep that I don't think any of the rest of us knew about. I certainly didn't. Where this same group in the same area, there were some SAS guys that had a number of these desert patrol vehicles, and basically they had been found by probably this same group of guys. And what they did is they focused their fire on one vehicle, and they disabled that vehicle. And then the SAS dudes did what they do. They circled the wagons around that one vehicle, and they fought until a MH-47 landed in the middle of their convoy, and they exfilled everyone and left their Stinger missiles, all their MBGs, fucking everything. But that,
Come on, dog. We all know this story. There's books written about it. These guys are fucking millionaires and are telling people how great fucking they are when it's the worst story you ever fucking heard. But go on, go on. I digress.
So this was apparently the group of guys that did that, or that's what we assumed, right? So Colonel Coltrip, Bill's like, hey man, let's dig in. We've got a defendable position, and it's not going to get any better outside of this. So let's just let's go with what we've got. So another Bill, the most fantastic Bill, Thedford, stands up, and he's our troop sergeant major. He says, you know what, we've got to suppress that position. So the OP that Stink was at, they said, well, we need to take it. So it was about 100, as I remember, it's about 100 to 120 meters, and then there's a boulder at the distant end where the OP was. So we had to basically run up this bowl, and then you run across a plateau. And there were a number of medium machine guns and RPGs. They had a couple cases of RPGs and a couple cases of RPG rounds, and maybe there were 7 dudes there, and some of them on the crew serve weapons, and man, it wasn't very popular. So it's me, as I remember, it's me, Bill, Thedford, Stink. You had Brad that was on a 40 mic because he was on a 4-wheeler. So he just had the pirate gun.
Yeah.
He had one of the pirate guns with 40 millimeter, and he started trying to suppress the OP, and then we just ran up the hill and assaulted that position. And that was the longest and slowest run that I've ever done in my life. Broad daylight, 9 o'clock in the morning. And man, we got 6 of the 7 dudes. We killed 6 of the 7. Number 7 ran down the hill and got behind a small berm at the bottom of the hill, and he would take pot shots at us till about midday when Chile finally got him, enough that he would wave a white flag. We'd shoot him, and he'd wave a white flag. We'd send some guys down, and because we needed to talk to somebody about what the hell was going on. And he would take a couple shots at the guys coming down. So then we'd shoot him again. Same thing over and over. Until finally, man, the guy had one arm, and he was pretty banged up. And finally he's like, no, I mean it this time, you know? So, but that's kind of fast forwarded, right? So we get out to this OP, and the Viper shows up, and he's got nothing on him. So I drop him down to the deck. He starts screaming around doing a show of force, you know, just to get their heads down. And that was about the time, even with no munitions, that we started to gain the advantage, as if we ever lost it, I guess. There were guys that were getting inside. Well, I guess, boy, I really passed over a critical part of it. So as those rounds are hitting Doug's troop, man, they hit Andy Fernandez. He was on the top gun in one of the vehicles, and Jay Hill was at his feet in the tub trying to get some air. He's another controller that we talked about earlier. Man, the round rattled back and forth in between Andy's plates apparently, and mortally wounded him. So that's why those guys were so emotional about anywhere but here, because they were really getting it bad. There were guys that were making it over the edge of their edge of the bowl, apparently. And they were, I mean, it was real bad on that side. My side, they never got that close, so it was nasty for them. We suppressed the position that hit them from the back, so then they would only fight 180 degrees instead of 360, and things started to get better at that point. We called the Kazovac, and my AFSOC brethren fucking left us hanging. We called. There was an airfield called H2, and there was a flight of Pavlos, the MH-53s.
53, yeah.
And they had some, they had a CSAR team there. So we called them up, and they said negative. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could say no.
I never knew you could say no.
So they fucking said no. They said the risk was too high. They can't fly across Iraq. They were 45 minutes away, Shrek. And they said that they couldn't fly into that. And they just fucking said no. So that left a mark. Andy bled out in about 45 minutes. So that was, I mean, not that they could have done that type of surgery on him, but they were 45 minutes away. It was just, it hurt me. So our friends in the black helicopters call up and they're like, fuck this, we're coming. And so they launched a couple of 60 Limas for the Kazovac birds with my 2.4 PJs on it. And man, they flew what was probably 4.5 hours, probably had to HAR en route. And broad daylight, they showed up, and we had a couple of DAPs with them as well. God love them. So Andy was already gone, and Jay had gotten shot in the face by. Was Jay with you at Tora Bora?
Jay, I was with the Admiral, but Jay was with us.
Okay, so Jay was an Anaconda. So Jay got shot in the face. It broke his jaw, cut his throat, and knocked him out. So then, probably Bleezy wrapped him up real good, and he looked like a damn cartoon character. His head was so big with gauze. Everybody thought Jay was kind of dead for a while because there was a lot of blood and stuff. But ended up he was all well, not all right, but he was perfectly. He was okay. So Bleezy wrapped his head up, gave him a lollipop, a fentanyl lollipop. So then Jay thought he was back in the fight, broken jaw and all. And so he tries to get on the radio, and we're like, "Hey man, no, you're not really in a situation to do that." But he was all in. So ended up Kazovac and him. As the Kazovac came in, I had so basically I had 2 columns of aircraft stacked up to the moon, one over each one of the villages, and I had them separated. By laterally, and then altitude separated every probably 1,000 feet or 1,500. I can't remember what it was, or 2,000 feet. So they were stacked up like rounds in a magazine, right? Over each one of the villages. And I would just talk to the bottom guy. They would check in, and probably Goose was checking them in, and they would go to the top of the magazine. I'd use the bottom guy until he was Winchester, run out of bombs and bullet. And then I would send him back to the tanker, and then he would go back to one of the airfields that we had. They would load up, and then he would go to the top of the magazine. So we went through every one of those planes that day, probably 7 or 8 times, if I remember correctly. Honestly, I couldn't tell you, but it was a Winchester and a lot of fucking planes, a lot of fucking times. So, and we had those 2 columns. Well, the DAPs showed up, and they're armed escort. They're a Sandy, what's called a Sandy for the, you had a flight of 2 A-10s and 2 Hogs, and then the 60s, the 60 that was doing the Kazovac for Jay and Andy. So set up the HLZ, and those guys came in, and they said, say intentions, the Hogs did. So I kind of put them over our position instead of into one of the stacks because they weren't going to be there for long. They never are there for very long if they're a Kazakh. So the DAPs, I said, well, let me give them some love. So we had these guys that were the same dudes, honestly. They were out there about a click north of our position. They were laid down and they were just kind of nickel and diming us, and it was a nuisance, right? They're not super effective, but you couldn't go and come as you pleaded, or as you please. So we needed to get rid of them. So I said, well, there's nothing better at getting rid of people than DAPs. So yeah. I did a call for fire with them. I brought them over my position, and they pitched up as they do, and then they leaned in, and then they broke off, and they're like, yeah, unseen. So I brought them back around, and Mark had moved to my position, and that joker, man, it's just a testament to the quality of operator that we have. While we were waiting prior to the deployment, the president kept saying, we're going to wait another 24 hours. We're going to wait another 24 hours. So in order to make the time pass, I gave them classes on the laser rangefinder. Because there's a little dance that you do. You got to tilt it forward and backwards and turn around and stick your finger in your belly button and count to 10. And so he remembered all that. So when we were out there, he would lay his targets for me. I would gin up the 9 lines, and he would just give me the waypoint off of the plugger, and I'd fill in the stuff, and then I'd call it in, and we were dealing. And believe it or not, I was doing 9 lines at the time instead of just some half-ass shit. So it was cool, and I was so proud of him for that, which was kind of whatever. But so he's doing that for me. So I said, man, I need you to. He only had a couple rounds left with his Barrett. So I said, man, pick out your least favorite guy over there, and when I tell you, I want you to shoot him. We were about 800 meters to a click out. So he picked a guy, and he said, okay, I'm ready. I got the DAPs around, and I said, okay, stand by for Mark, 50 cal. Troops in the open. So he shoots a guy, and it picks that dude up, and you know what it does, and it rips him in half. He looked like a washcloth, a bloody washcloth. And it just threw this little savage all over his buddies. And they're like, man, that's the worst possible thing that could ever happen. Not realizing that they were about to figure out what the worst possible thing was. Because it wasn't a 50 cal, it was 30 millimeter.
Yeah.
So, man, they start
one every 6 seconds, yeah.
And that Dabs is like, yeah, I got him. And he rolls in and does pedal turns on these sumbitches. Like, that gives him the left to right? And he starts doing pedal turns on him and puts some 275s in there for good measure. And he, of course, gets that attitude because he's driving at him and he's losing his airspace, or he's losing his airspeed. So you know how he kind of wallows out, and then he'll come out and he'll break out to the left, and then Dash 2 pitches up and he's doing the same thing, right? You've seen it a million times. So Dash 2 is giving him the goodness, and one is flying back, and there's a wadi that's just north of our position, and he gets just about to the wadi. I mean, it is like literally 100 meters north of our position, and we thought, because this is 4 or 5 hours into this fight, we thought we could see into that wadi. We hadn't yet brought a four-wheeler because I was doing so many strikes around us that we didn't want him to get mixed up in the fight and have a frat issue. Because we had Miho on the four-wheeler, and then we backed him back in when I started getting closer to us. So we never got eyes on the bottom of the wadi. We had a decent assumption that we knew what was in there, and man, we were wrong. So this DAP that broke off to the west pitches up out of the blue, and he's not talking to me, and he just leans into this wadi, and he is going fucking batshit, bro. He's shooting the hell out of the wadi, and you look and you're like, holy crap, man. The the crew chiefs that are in the back that just rearm the rockets and guns, those guys are on their tethers with their M4s, and they're leaning out the windows, engaging. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I'm telling him, say intentions, say intentions. He can't hear anything because he's going batshit. And I said, Dash 2, what's going on with Dash 1 on inner team? And he goes, man, I don't know, but I'm in 5 seconds. So I'm like, all right, well, this is something. So instead of him losing airspeed and rolling out again so that Dash 2 can come in and do it as per the SOP, man, he backs up, wop, 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 wop. And you can see as he starts to back up to get some more airspeed, it's just some pilot shit, right? So he's trying to get some altitude so he can dive in again on the same target. And you can start to see stuff flying out of the wadi. There's all this dust and everything from the rockets and all, but you can start to see stuff flying out of the wadi. And he dives back in and he's going nuts again on him. And Dash 2 has to break out to the right and come back around. And I'm like, man, what do you see? And he's like, man, there's a bunch of technicals and dudes in that wadi. And they're like 150 meters from you. I'm like, holy crap. So we've got hogs that are up above, sped, the guys from, it doesn't matter. Oh, Barnes. Yeah. The greatest fighter squadron in the Air Force. I'll say it out loud. They had the most weapons and tactics instructors in the Air Force, of any unit in the Air Force, and they were a guard unit out of Maryland. So just badasses, all of them. So this guy's like, hey man, I got this. I want to follow them in. So I said, all right, man. I finally got a hold of the DAPs. They broke out. Both of them had reset, and they were coming around. And I said, okay, after this run, I want you guys to pop overt flares as you're off, and then I'm going to follow you in with some hogs on your mark. And they said, oh, this is good. This is good. So I said, okay. So we started doing that, right? And the DAPs would break off. They'd do overt flares. And then the hogs would come in with guns, rockets, and guns and rockets initially. And then sped, he resets. The DAPs give him another round of love. And he's like, man, I want to put some airburst on it. Well, airburst is an emotional event for everybody else on the line. That's where the round goes. They basically do a proximity fuse on it, so the round doesn't use an impact fuse where it hits the ground and blows up like a cone going from the ground and up. It blows up over the target and does the cone down, which is absolutely obscene to anybody that's underneath that cone. It's so effective on light-skinned vehicles and troops in the open. It's a wonderful thing.
We did a lot of air bursts in Tora Bora.
Oh, I guarantee it, dude. It's my favorite. Favesies right here. So,
yeah.
I tell you, there's a thing about airbursts, though, is, man, the min safe distance goes up significantly, and there wasn't a whole lot of data at the time for how far away you should do it. So you should use good judgment, and certainly 150, 200 meters was well inside the min safe distance, even for impact fuse. So we said, you know what, this is pretty nasty. So I called over the troop commander for 2 troop, and I said, man, get the guys underneath vehicles, any defilade they can get them into it, and call when they're established, right? So he says, yeah, man, we're good. What's going on? And I'm like, because at the time, believe it or not, this troop commander wasn't on fires. They weren't monitoring fires at this point because it was still relatively early on in the war. So he didn't know that there were troops literally 150 meters to the north, and didn't know why I was asking them to get under the vehicle and everything. Since then, everybody got a lot more situational awareness just by monitoring fires. So put them underneath the vehicle. Slung a couple airbursts at him, and man, oh my goodness, it was awesome. And then we continued to follow up like that until we cleaned up the wadi, and then so that was a good 30-45 minutes of loving in the wadi. And then I sent the DAPs down the northern village. It was about 3 kilometers away. They went in that village because now we're many, many, many hours into this fight. And the only guys, basically we had the ROE that we established was if anybody comes south of that village or west from the other village, then they're hostile. If you're going to run, you better not run this direction. So we put the DAPs in town and said, man, if you guys see anybody that's coming this direction, because they were dumping off troops with ambulances. They had everything, dude. There were so many vehicles. We ended up, I think by the end of the day, we had killed probably 450 of these Ba'ath Party loyalists, probably 35 vehicles, and Lord knows how many buildings that we neutralized. So it was a fantastic day, other than losing Andy and Jay. So we did that until the sun went down, and then I had a number of dempis that I put in the villages so that we could go ahead and drive out, and nobody followed us on the way out. We found our place to a remain over day site for the next for that period of darkness. We made it to a hill, and it was, man, again, it was like God put it there for us. This thing was completely tabletop flat, and then there was just this hill. It was just down in the middle of nowhere. There was fields of poppies or some kind of something, or it wasn't poppies. It was something that made Stinky, I mean, horribly allergy attack. So his face swelled shut. We got to the top of the hill, and basically this was the first day we put a flag up, and we flew an American flag, and we dug fighting positions on the top of this hill. We had our fighting positions up. We flew an American flag, and we basically welcomed all comers because we were fairly sick of stuff at this point. So there was a village that was probably 3-4 kilometers off. We had a very small UAS at the time. I can't remember what it was. It was one of the first ones that certainly we used. It used this big old slingshot. So we had a couple guys holding it, and we launched this thing, and we flew it over the village. It's kind of a show of force. And all of a sudden, the village, apparently, I got the memo, so everybody took their bed sheets and hung them outside their windows, and they said, yeah, man, we don't necessarily need any of that. So we left from there, and we went up to Grizzly. I'll take a break for a second. What you got?
You're talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
Why the fuck would I interrupt that?
Oh, okay. So come to find out that when we did tactically question the dude that Chili got, we asked him some questions because we had a sergeant major that was fluent in Farsi. I believe it's Farsi, whatever the hell he's good at, or whatever that guy spoke. And he says, yeah, we're Ba'ath Party loyalists. Apparently the savage that was out there in the field was a member of the Ba'ath Party. So they drove about 30, 45 minutes into Crit, which there were no friendly forces in at the time. And went to the headquarters, and they said, hey, if you guys want to kill some Americans, we got them all. We got them. So bring your trucks out, and let's do this thing. So they flowed in all day long. That's why we had so many of them, is they were coming in from Tikrit just to get their kill on. And we gave them a bit of a rude awakening. So that, man, it ended up, I don't know if it's a patent or whatever, but ended up being a package that they created after the day on the 2nd of April called the Black Swarm. And it was cool because it was kind of like this the death package that they put together, DAPs and A10s. So that was one of the ones that they kind of put on file, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's do this again. That was good. So we kind of came up with that on the fly. And that was really, really cool until it got really, really, really a lot cooler. with an asterisk, because there were bad things that happened here too. But so we go and we take in TC, and it wasn't a bloodbath by any stretch. I can't remember if there was even anybody that wanted to fight at Grizzly. There were a couple guys. I guess there were a couple that we got because they ended up smelling real bad on our way to and from the MSS every day. But we basically, our whole intent was we would establish there. We had Rangers collapse in on us, and man, we had a column of 10 M1 Abrams. I think they were from Riley in Kansas. They came into H2 on C-17s, and they tasked them to us, right? So we said, "Oh, this is the coolest thing ever," because I had never even been around a tank. So we had the petting zoo where we get to climb inside and get to see all this stuff. And then we figured out, okay, out of these 10 tanks, the tank commander said that kind of platoon commander for all the tanks. We said, how many runs at a time? He said, well, we can look you in the eye and tell you that out of these 10, we'll have 4 of them running at any given, for any night. Okay. All right, that's good. So we'll put 2 in front and 2 in back, and we'll drive into Tikrit, and we'll try to steal. We had the chauffeur for Saddam. We had his driver. We had his, probably his, if I remember, his lawyer, his doctors, because this is his hometown, right?
Yeah.
So we knew where those guys were, and we said, okay, well, we'll grab them. They'll certainly tell us where old Saddam is, and we'll have him here in the next couple of days. Because we assessed that they didn't think that there were any Americans in that part of the country because we were the only ones that were there. So maybe he had fell back to his hometown. So we would drive our Gowers in, which certainly aren't the best vehicles for an urban environment. So we had 2 tanks in the front of our convoy and 2 tanks in the back. And then we would go up, and we would, I think at times we would steal cars, and we would go up and grab these guys, throw them in the trunk of the car, bring them back to the Gowers, where the tanks, we would be on the edge of town, just like a clover leaf. And we'd park just south of the clover leaf. And there's a village, not a village, urban area, neighborhood that was right there that ran parallel with the road that we were on, the access road that goes into the cloverleaf. So, those tanks aren't quiet. So, neither are the DAPs that we had that were overhead either. So after a period of time, we go up there, and we'd send a team in to go grab whoever, and we just sit there and hang out like a loose tooth. So then people started shooting at us, and we're like, oh, well, this is all right, except we're, of course, unarmed. We can't see where they're unarmored. We can't see where they're coming from. Well, this guy decided he'd shoot at us with we had one tank that was up on the cloverleaf, and he's pointing down the road, and that was really cool, right? So I put Miho. I asked Miho to get in that tank, and we got authorization to fire anytime that certain constraints were met. So we said, okay, when they get within a kilometer of that tank, we're allowed to engage them, right? So had Miho up on his embedder, and then we had all of our vehicles with all our machine guns on them, and then I had DAPs and I had A-10s that were overhead. And so basically, we had vehicles loaded up with folks that knew we were there, in these taxis and cars. There'd be like 7 or 8 dudes in this thing, all packed in there like, it must have smelled awesome. So the car would come down the road, and basically we'd throw a stabo round through the front grille, and then they would rake them with the coaxes. So you got 50 caliber and I think 25 millimeter coaxes on the tank. So it was it was something. I mean, that was neat. If you've never been around an M1 going at it, it is something to behold. So we ended up stacking probably 15 vehicles like that night. They would literally drive up and go hauling ass and think, well, I'm going to be the one that gets through this. And so there was just a big, huge stack of cars that were all on fire and bodies everywhere that are on fire. And the next guys would go, yeah, man, certainly I can make it through this. But then in the neighborhood that was just to the west of us, this dude thought that it would be a good idea to shoot at the DAP with a AK with tracers. Man, the dude shot with tracers. So, because we're just kind of, you hear clink, clink, and they can't really see us. We couldn't really see them. But then this dude went and thought that it'd be a good idea to shoot at a DAP with tracers.
Never go full retard. Never go full retard.
Our support by fire line with all the vehicles, essentially, support by fire line, all shifted fire onto the only guy that marked his position. And man, we gave it to him. And then I said, okay, mijo, your position's marked by tracers, their tracers. So mijo slings the tanks over and they engage. And then I got a positive check fire from mijo. I said, okay, lift fire. They get a positive check fire from the troop in the pin scours. And then I put some DAPs on it. And then the DAPs, of course, roll off dry with a covert flare, and then I put hogs in to finish it. Boom, 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 boom. So it was the most beautiful display of firepower ever massed. It was a wonderful thing. That's why you should never use tracers. You know that, but the guys on the phone here may think that tracers are a good idea. Never are they a good idea.
No, for all the bad guys listening, use tracers.
Yes,
use tracers.
You should use tracers all the time.
Prank call. Use tracers.
Tracers are your friend. Last rounds of every magazine should definitely be tracers.
Yeah, for real. If not all of them.
Every other round.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, we put light heavy machine guns. We put DAPs and A10s. Oh, and M1 Abrams, all on the same targets. It was wonderful. So they didn't even name that shit. That was just too awesome to be real. So we of course didn't get Saddam on that one. We ended up going back, and basically the Rangers would go out every other night. So my Army guys would go out one night with us, and we'd do the snatches, and then the Rangers would do Ranger objectives. Like they had the Air Force Academy that was their version of it, right?
Yeah.
So they would go and do big things like that. And man, unfortunately, they went out and they had 4 tanks with them, and there was a RRC element. I don't know if I should. There was an RRC element that was maneuvering around the north side. I'll say north. I can't remember what it was. They were maneuvering around the airfield and Air Force Academy, and man, they were engaged by the tanks. One of the only fratricides I've ever been directly party to. I mean, I wasn't on the ground that day, but it was of course the closest to home. So they ended up shooting my buddy Scott with a tank in the chest, with a 120 round in the chest. And then they used those awesome coaxes, and they raked the 2 Humvees. They thought that they were BRDMs or whatever. And man, they shot them to shit. I had another friend that I went through selection with. It was a pararescueman that was in that RRC element, and he ended up kind of pulling the guys out. He thought that it was a coordinated Iraqi ambush. So he was taking the bodies in the middle of being raked by the directly engaged by the M1. He was pulling the bodies out, putting them out because they were all on fire because they're incendiary rounds, right. And stuffing them underneath bushes because they thought that there would be a clearing party that went through and captured them. So he's trying to hide these guys in the middle of all this. It was his vehicle that got shot. He may have been blown out of the vehicle. He went back in, grabbed the guys in the middle of all of it, and evacuated them out of the vehicle while it was getting shot up. And then they shifted fire onto the second vehicle, and and ate that one alive. So he ran up there and pulled all those guys out and hid them. Of course, there was never a clearing party that went through because it wasn't an Iraqi ambush. So that night, for the next night or so, man, those guys held on to the information that they could have very well been them, because we went back in and did the site exploitation, and there was no evidence of anyone with that damn tank. And the tank said that he shot up a couple of BRDMs or whatever, and the only two vehicles that were shot were the Humvees that were in their convoy. So that was kind of the low point of the war for me, honestly, until I left the battlefield. Horrible. But yeah, sort of driven the latter part of my career to try to help out with some fratricide avoidance measures, different things, to be able to positively tag folks, because I don't want anything like that to ever happen to anybody anymore. That's a low spot in the conversation. So let's see.
Boom. Boom. I got a question for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Book just came out about Chappie.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Well, I own it because, of course, I've got to support our friends, and Dan is one of my heroes, the guy that wrote the book. He was a teammate. I started reading it and then I stopped. Of course, I was there on staff with the Navy guys for 4 years straight. I was in the building and I supported them the rest of the time, but I was a member of the organization for a while. And there's a lot of my good friends are there. And there's a lot of consternation because I ended up doing a number of deployments with guys that were there on the ground with him. And some of the guys that were specifically with him on the top of the mountain, I would call friends, but I do not agree with any part of how that ended up turning out. And there's a right and a wrong way, and this is Ed's opinion, and I'll probably lose some friends over it. But there's a right and a wrong way to handle things, and there were, as far as I understand it, there were a number of measures to block Chappie's Medal of Honor, which is the only Medal of Honor that's captured on video in history. Right. And they refuted the videos. They refuted the fact that he was alive. They refuted the fact that that it was stated that they checked his pulse and everything, and he was dead. And man, I am not going to be the guy that sits here and tells you should do this or that when you're in that shit state position. But don't. There was a point that there was a lack of character, in my opinion. That man, once it's concluded that we made a mistake, and in the heat of all of it, he was actually alive. Granted, his blood pressure was probably low and everything else, and goodness, you're in the direct lay of machine guns and you're eating grenades.
Hey, check this out. You think you could even feel a pulse if you're not a trained fucking doctor or PJ or, you know what I mean? So
that's not the part that I take exception to. Certainly,
agree. And I totally agree.
And I can tell you that if we had any one of my teammates, Army dudes that were with me during the last stories, they would probably tell a slightly different story because it's always from your myopic perspective, right? But I can tell you that I would not have. There was a good bit of politics that went along with it, and Slab got the CMH probably easily a year before Chappie did. And Chappie literally laid down his life to save Slab and Turbo and RJ, and that's the part that hurts my heart. That's the part that makes you question teamwork, what teamwork means to you, and really friendship and honor. I think that there was a significant lack of character involved. I knew the story from guys that were there on the hill And that story changed over time until the story that went into the CMH report
Correct.
at the end of the day for Slab. I watched that story change from the mouths of the guys that told me the story. And that is that's a rough one for me. That's hard for me to deal with. And that's, yeah, it frustrates me a lot. Well, I guess I'll just leave it with that without, I don't mind losing friends that aren't friends, but it's as contention as any topic that I know of in our career field. Because we still have guys that are still there fighting alongside every single day, and we bleed with them every single day. So it's a rough, it's just a rough situation.
Yeah, I always find it interesting that people are like, well, you don't work there, how would you know? But like, what guys don't understand is the small crew that we run in, which, might seem large, but it's really not, right?
No.
That small crew of dudes we run in is, I was hearing the stories how, that next day, because I was in country for other stuff, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that they changed their HLZ and the unit commander told them not to land there.
Yeah.
And they didn't care, right? I know for a fact. I know for a fact that the next day, the Navy guys that I was talking to seen the video and thought it was Roberts on the video and was telling me the day after, Roberts is going to get the CMH for that. Watch the video. And I watched the video. But you can't tell who it is from ISR. And then to see where it goes now, like, it is really disheartening for me that you could create your own problem, right? And then get awarded a medal for creating your own problem.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
You could very easily say that more often than not, you don't get put in those situations where it would warrant a Bronze Star, a Silver Star, any of it, without making a mistake, choosing a wrong tactic, or certainly the enemy gets a vote, right? So maybe they put you into a situation that, maybe they're that good, but you and I both know that more often than not, it's mistakes.
Right.
It's mistakes, big or small, that lead you into that fucking situation that you get these awards for. I've done them. Everybody that I know has made bad decisions that it's, Murphy gets a vote, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
There is a cardinal law, you and I both know it, that you never go into the same HLZ a second time. You don't do it. You don't go if there's only one HLZ. And, completely aware of that. And man, but again, I'm not going to armchair quarterback because I wasn't there. And there were factors that lead you to come to that, and you assess the risks. And, on paper, it looks like those risks were valid, and they should not have made that decision. But again, I'm not going to be the guy that second guesses much, I guess.
I don't think there's anything, everyone's like, well, I don't want to be the armchair quarterback. Okay, maybe not, right? And I'm not saying anything personally wrong, right? I'm not pointing any fingers. But what I am saying, right, is if we can't look at exactly what happened with a critical eye through critical facts, right, we're never going to take the lessons learned away from it. So, you know what? You could say I fucking Monday morning quarterbacked, but if I could learn something out of this situation, isn't that the best thing to happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I'd also say this is like, I think this is bullshit. Because I'll tell you, the most successful mission that happened in Afghanistan, in my opinion?
Gecko?
Nope. The only guy that went solo. Solo mission.
Clue me in. I'm
There's
Uh,
a unit guy that went out
uh-huh.
solo in Afghanistan and pulled it off and snatched a guy.
Really?
Yep. You didn't
That's
know this?
fantastic. No. No, I
Yeah,
don't know why I would have missed that, but
that was me.
really?
And I'm going to tell you this, if I could go out alone by myself and not have any fucking problems, give me 5 or 6 guys, see if I don't fuck everybody up. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
my point with that is like, yeah, you know what I
Oh, we
got
got
for
to
an
talk
award?
about that after this.
So, but you know what you're going to get when everything goes right as an award?
No,
Fucking nothing,
no, nothing.
right? So it's
Yeah.
like I got to watch these shit shows happen and know there's major mistakes being made. And and I'll also say this is like, dude, going out raiding buildings with 10, 12 guys, or all the crazy shit. You rode with the squadrons. You know the fucking shit we're pulling off nightly, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is nothing compared to being out alone. And I tell anybody this: I learned 100 to 1 fucking shit that would save your fucking life being out alone. But the problem is the community is all about who's got the biggest dick. So when you get the Medal of Honor, everyone's going to talk to you about how you got it. But the problem is you got it from creating your own problems, not from shit going right. And I mean, think about this, go back to Vietnam. How many guys were pulling off legendary shit
Mm-hmm.
versus the awards or the fucking shit stories you hear about how when it all goes wrong. I mean, yeah, it could all go wrong at any time, but with some good decisions, with some hard work, with some coordination, you know as well as I do. You killed 450 people in a day. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible to, overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers, with maybe
Yeah.
anything you don't need. You know what I mean? So the whole Chappie Medal of Honor thing, as an experienced guy, as a fucking retired SAR major, really made me relook the community as a fucking whole. And I'd also say this too is, and I think the stories and the people that are putting out the what to do right now, generally speaking, aren't
Mm-hmm.
guys like me and you who, hey, I just tried to work hard. I tried to surround myself with good dudes. I try to make good decisions. You know what I mean? I try to, never let anyone down, right? The
Yeah.
guys you should be hearing from, no one hears from us.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's such a contentious subject. And,
I know. That's why I wanted to ask you.
yeah,
So
thanks
I
for
kind of
putting me
thought,
on the spot. I
yeah,
probably
dog,
lost half
boom.
my friends.
No, you're not going to lose any friends, because if they didn't think you were already thinking that, they're
Yeah.
smoking crack.
Yeah.
And
It's just,
like, look, a lot of guys say, that, you hate SEAL, you just hate SEALs, you just, it's like, no, that's not true, because I have SEAL friends also, like, fucking, I know those guys, and I tell you this, I just seen it time and time again. You know what I mean? And I'd even go a step farther and saying, if you could check a guy's pulse, you could bring that guy with you.
yeah. I mean, it's just so hard to, I'm not going to go there. I mean, all I can say is once it's all said and done, let a motherfucker get credit for what he did. And he wasn't doing it for credit. He was doing it for his team. He literally made a deliberate decision to die for his teammates, and they shit on his corpse.
For real.
They shit on his memory by refuting it. It was bad, bro. I've got some friends. I certainly was a part of the investigation back in 2012, reviewing tapes, and that tape the final tape, that wasn't available then. When I was reviewing all the documents, it was not available. I don't know where it came out of or whatever, but the first time I had seen it is when it was on the internet. That wasn't one of the ones that I got to look at when we were building the CMH case back in 11 or 12. But I can tell you, man, that it dishonors his memory when you refute the facts. I mean, the simple facts. And that's the part that frustrates me to no end. It just, man, it hurts my heart. It's like your best friend cheating on you. You know, something like, I don't know, it's worse.
Yeah, it definitely hurt my heart, you know, and that people ask me all the time, oh, what do you think of the CCTers? Or like, dude, we brought them everywhere, like invaluable, you know what I mean? Like never any issues, right? But at the same time, like, you know, if this was a different, you know, branch of service that did this mission, I can tell you this, you know who'd have been the first one to write that CMH for Chappie?
Yep. I know for sure. I mean, without a doubt. But it just, it is what it is, I guess. So.
It's the way of the world, man. It's the way of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something, man. Oh, good note. Jay Hill that got, shot on the 2nd of April. Man, he deployed the very next rotation. He deployed that summer. So that was April 2nd. He deployed that summer with the Navy guys back over to Afghanistan.
Dang,
that's that quick. He got healed up, got back in shape, and deployed again the next rotation. That dude is a damn warrior.
Some guys just got it like that, you know?
He got it. You wouldn't know it. He's a big old goofball. But I think that he's the best that we have. I think he's the best that we have had. Or, you know, top 5. There's some dudes that are, certainly Chappie. Oh my goodness. Chappie was my roommate, bro. Like at the beach, he came in and he stayed in my apartment before that deployment. And I was like, who's this dude? He wasn't even on an assault team, anymore. He was a little, long in the tooth. So he had moved to one of our other teams, as I understood it. And man, he came back and I'm like, so who are you? And he's like, oh, you know, I was on the team for a long time, but, this September 11th thing, you know, it hurt my heart. So I threw my name back in the hat, to do whatever. And it wasn't a fucking airfield mission, dude. Like there were a lot of guys that said, oh, you know, I'm going to get justice. And then they jump into a cold airfield and they get their mustard stain and they're heroes, you know. No, fuck that. This guy said, man, I'm going to get in the fight in a big way, and I'm going to go back on a recce team, and I'm going to go back in harm's way in a big way. Not some bullshit. Yeah, I'll carry your bags for you and I'll do this and that. No, man. 2 very young daughters, and just got in the nastiest situation with no warm up, didn't do alert prior, did nothing. Just fucking jumped into it and then just went balls out like you read about. Waist deep snow, suppressing enemy machine gun positions, you know, dodging freaking hand grenades on video. Like, I'm not making it up. Shit was real. And watching that video will make you cry, man. That dude was legit. And I thought that he was that's why you can never judge anybody. Right. Because honestly, my impression of him was, he's old has-been. What the hell's he doing going on a recce team? And then there you go. So, man, just incredible. Incredible. So, I don't know. What you got, buddy?
Dog, I think this is where we wrap it up and live the fight another day. Part 3 should be coming soon. What do you think?
Yeah, where do you want to go next? Should we finally talk about the Shawshank?
Those times we were majors in a full.
You fuckers. So you say that you give us credit, but you guys made me a made-up captain instead of a made-up major. You got to be majors and I was a captain. That's some BS.
It wasn't my deal.
Hey, if you're gonna make up a rank.
All right. Hold on. Let me just pump the brakes on this shit. Because okay, when I took over, what was the first thing we did the first day when I took over?
Watch a secure video. I don't know.
No, no. Hey, the first day I remember the first day, like I was officially in charge. Right?
Yeah.
We were drinking whiskey in the room early in the morning, and fucking what's his name? What's his name? Stevens? I don't know.
Yeah. Matt.
He came in. You were near the front door on a table playing a computer video game. He walked in. You got your headphones on. Acknowledged him 0. He picked up your cup and smelled it. He looked at me. I had a cup in my hand, and he walked out.
So we have to talk about him because he is a dear friend of mine now. But he and I hated each other. Then. We absolutely. So let me give you another 2-minute story. 2-minute story, and
we should save it. Save it.
Okay.
Save
okay. This is such a good one. Such a good one. Okay.
Let me wrap this up. So,
all right, my man.
I'm John Shrek McPhee, the Sheriff of Baghdad. Another good podcast. I'm here with my man Ed. Ed, hey, close us out. What do you want to say to everybody? Till next time.
Man, thank you guys for your interest. This is certainly a pleasure, and it's an honor to get to talk to you.